You're nothing but a waste of money. My father's voice rang out like a slap at Thanksgiving dinner. And the worst part? No one at the table flinched. Not even my mother. That moment didn't just sting. It burned something into me. I didn't cry, though. I chewed my turkey, nodded slowly, and silently planned the most polite, precise revenge they'd never see coming. Because what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that they were living off my money. Let me rewind. My name is Olivia Carter. I'm 34 years old, a financial tech founder, and until recently, the secret lifeline behind my parents' lavish retirement lifestyle. Growing up, I was the quiet one, the sensitive child. While my brothers were football stars and future doctors, I preferred books and spreadsheets. I wasn't loud or flashy, I just wanted to build something that mattered. But in our household, if you weren't winning trophies or bringing in acceptance letters to Ivy Leagues, you were background noise. They never saw me coming. And they never asked. I started my fintech company at 25. It wasn't glamorous at first, just me in a cramped apartment with secondhand monitors and an overworked laptop. I coded during the day, delivered groceries at night, and taught myself everything from UX to investor pitching. When I told my parents, their reaction was laughter. My mom said, "That's cute, Liv. But when will you get a real job?" Dad added, "You've already cost us enough." But I didn't argue. I just kept building, and 3 years later, when I landed a $2.4 million Series A round, I didn't tell them. Not because I wanted to spite them, but because I knew what would happen if I did. When my startup exploded, I set up a trust fund, not for myself, but for them. You see, even after the emotional wounds, I still felt this weird sense of duty. They were my parents. And no matter how much they disregarded me, I didn't want them to suffer in old age. So I set up automatic monthly deposits into a trust that funded their lifestyle, vacations, medical bills, even the renovation of their kitchen. They never asked where it came from. They just assumed it was the trust they had set up years ago, but they didn't realize that fund had dried up. I had quietly replaced it, and I never expected anything in return until Thanksgiving. That dinner started like any other. My brothers boasting about their latest bonuses. My mother beaming with pride at how successful her sons were. Me? I was told to help in the kitchen. When I handed my father a glass of wine, he looked at me and muttered, "We should have stopped at 2 kids. You were just expensive." The table went silent. My brothers smirked. My mother didn't blink. I excused myself, drove home, logged into the trust account portal, and I clicked pause disbursement. 3 weeks later, the calls started. "Olivia, the bank's saying there's a problem with the trust. Something about funds not clearing?" My mom's voice was tight, confused. I kept my tone even. "Oh, that's strange. I'll look into it." I didn't. Another week passed. They missed a mortgage payment on the vacation home. Then the card they used for medical expenses declined at a clinic. Then, the panic set in. My brother Nathan messaged me in a group chat. "Do you know what's going on with mom and dad's trust? They're freaking out." I responded with a single sentence. I figured they wouldn't want help from a waste of money. At first, they pretended it was a mistake, a banking error, maybe some fraud. Then came the anger. "How dare you cut off your own parents?" my mother hissed in a voicemail. "After everything we've done for you." I listened once, then deleted it. They didn't realize, everything they had for the past 6 years, every cruise, every new appliance, every hospital bill, was covered by the waste of money, daughter. And now that waste had pulled the plug, they demanded a family meeting. Said they wanted to talk in person. I agreed. We met at my older brother's house. Everyone was there. Parents, siblings, even a cousin who had nothing to do with it, but like drama. My father tried to start the conversation with his usual authority. "We know you've done something. So whatever power trip this is, it ends now." I didn't raise my voice. I simply opened my laptop, connected it to the TV screen, and showed them the financial breakdown. 6 years of payments. Every deposit. Every hospital bill I'd covered. Their faces turned pale. Then read. I ended with, "I wasn't asking for thanks, but I won't keep funding people who think I'm worthless." The fallout wasn't immediate, but it was thorough. They lost the vacation house within 3 months. Downsized from their suburban palace to a small townhouse. My mother took a part-time job at a boutique. My father, too proud to work again, stayed home and stewed. Friends began asking why they weren't traveling anymore, why the fancy dinners stopped. They gave vague answers, but the family knew. They blamed me. But for once, I didn't care. In the silence that followed, I found peace. I started going on trips of my own. I finally launched the second product line for my company. I spoke at tech panels, mentored young women in STEM, and bought myself a house overlooking the ocean. And you know what? I didn't miss their approval. Not even a little. About a year later, I got a letter, not an email, A handwritten letter from my father to IT was short. No apology. Just a request, we're struggling. If there's anything you can do. I sat with it for a while, then I wrote back, there was something I could do. For 6 years, I did it. You taught me that money is wasted on people who don't value you. I finally listened. And I never heard from him again. I didn't expect a grand apology. But a part of me, deep down, had hoped for something. A flicker of remorse. A hint that maybe, just maybe, they'd understood what they'd done. It never came. Instead, word trickled through extended family. My mother told an aunt that I was a cruel, that I'd abandoned them in their time of need. My father apparently claimed I'd tricked them into depending on me, like I had masterminded their downfall. No one asked me what really happened, and I didn't bother explaining. Months passed. Then one day, a message popped up on LinkedIn from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, my cousin Rachel. Hey, Olivia. I don't know if this is weird, but I just wanted to say. I heard what happened. And I'm proud of you. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a full minute. Rachel had always been the quiet one at family gatherings, like me. We'd never been close, but there was a silent understanding between us. A shared sense of being overlooked. I appreciate that, I typed. More than you know. What followed was hours of conversation. Stories we'd both bottled up. Things we were never allowed to say in front of the golden children. For the first time in ages, I didn't feel alone in my own family, and for the first time ever, someone from the inside said, you weren't crazy. You were brave. Her birthday came that summer. I saw the reminders on my phone. My email calendar even had an automated note to send her flowers, something I'd set years ago and never disabled. I hovered over the delete button. Then, instead of deleting it, I changed the delivery address to my office. The bouquet arrived 2 days later. White lilies. Her favorite. I looked at them for a long time, then I placed them in the lobby, with a card that read, to all the women who raised themselves. That fall, I was invited to speak at a Women in Tech conference in Chicago. At first, I planned to give the usual talk, growth metrics, funding rounds, networking, but something pulled me in another direction. I started my speech with a sentence I'd never said aloud before. My parents called me a waste of money. So I built a life without them. The room went quiet. I saw women nodding. A few wiping tears. That's when I realized, this wasn't just my story. This was so many people's story, people who'd been told they weren't enough. That they didn't matter. That they owed everything to people who never gave them anything back. I ended the talk with this: you can love people from a distance. And you can choose peace over performance. Forgiveness doesn't mean re-entry. It means release. A year after the fallout, my brother Nathan tried to orchestrate a healing reunion. He sent a long email about family being important, about burying the hatchet, about how we should all move forward. He CC'd my parents. I didn't respond right away. I sat with it for a week. Read it over again and again. Finally, I replied with 2 lines, I've already moved forward. Alone. I never heard back, but a month later, I saw pictures on Facebook. They had the reunion anyway. Smiling faces. Barbecue in the backyard. A caption that read, family is forever. I closed the app and went back to writing my next keynote. I was scheduled to speak at MIT the following month. Some families use loyalty as a leash. I had finally taken mine off. One chilly morning, I got a call from a lawyer's office in Connecticut. Apparently, a distant great-aunt I barely remembered had passed. And in her will, she left me a sizable inheritance, enough to buy a second property or invest further into my company. She mentioned you were the only one who ever wrote her thank you cards, the lawyer said. I hung up and sat in stunned silence. IT reminded me of something I'd long forgotten. People remember kindness. Quiet, sincere kindness. The kind that doesn't expect applause, and sometimes, the universe gives it back when you least expect it. I never wrote back to my father's first letter, but one night, after a glass of wine and an overwhelming wave of nostalgia, I opened a blank page and started typing. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. I wrote what I remembered from childhood, the good moments. Watching old westerns on TV. Him teaching me how to ride a bike. The way he used to hum Sinatra while grilling in the backyard, then I wrote what it became. How it felt to be invisible, dismissed, ridiculed. I ended it with, you lost your daughter the moment you refused to see her, and now she's someone you'll never know. I never sent it, but I didn't need to. The healing wasn't in the delivery. It was in the writing. Over time, my life became full of people I chose to be my best friend, Kara, who FaceTimed me during panic attacks and celebrated every launch like it was her OWNMY mentor, Alan, who once told me, you're not too much. They were just too small. My assistant, Maya, who had no family of her own and joined me for every Thanksgiving since that year, we did something different. We cooked together. No tension. No veiled insults. No fake smiles. Just laughter, good food, and peace. We toasted with champagne to chosen families, Kara said, clinking her glass, and for the first time in a long time, I felt home years later. I started a scholarship. It was for young women in tech, especially those from unsupportive families. We called it the Not a Waste Fund. Applications poured in. Stories that made my heart ache. Girls who were called failures, burdens, embarrassments, just like I was, but with one check, one chance, one belief, everything could change. Every recipient got a handwritten note from me. You are not a waste. You are the investment the world didn't see coming. After I passed my mother in the bookstore, I walked to the cafe next door and ordered a tea, hands surprisingly steady. I thought I might shake, cry, or even go back to say something, anything, but I didn't, because in that small moment, I realized something profound. Not every ending needs a grand finale. Some chapters close quietly, with no explosions or tears. Just peace. I looked out the window as she exited the store, arms cradling a book I couldn't see. She paused at the curb, then walked off without turning back. That was the last time I saw her. 2 years later, I adopted, not in the conventional way, not yet, anyway. I began mentoring a teenager named Ava through a nonprofit that connected tech professionals with high school girls interested in coding. She was 16, fiercely intelligent, and completely unaware of her brilliance. Her parents dismissed her dream of becoming a developer, told her it wasn't feminine or realistic. When she told me that, I felt a familiar burn in my chest. I met her every Saturday at the library. We worked on code, yes, but more than that, we built trust. She began to smile more, hold her shoulders straighter, and one day, she said, I want to be like you when I grow up. I blinked hard. You'll be better, I told her, and I meant it came on a Tuesday afternoon. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me said to answer. Olivia, my brother Nathan said, his voice softer than I remembered. Hi, I replied, guarded but calm. He paused. I wanted to say I get it now. About everything. About why you did what you did. I didn't speak. I waited. I used to think you were cold. But now, watching Dad refuse help from everyone while still blaming the world, I realize how much you carried. I exhaled slowly. Thank you. I'm sorry, he added. I was cruel to you. I see that now. I won't lie and say all was forgiven in that one call. But it was a start, and for the first time in years, I felt the door creak open, not to let them back in completely, but to let the healing begin. There's a space behind my house now where I planted a small garden. Nothing fancy, just lavender, rosemary, a few bright marigolds. It started as something to fill time during business quarter, but as I watched things grow, slowly, quietly, patiently, I realized how much I needed it. Each plant reminded me of something. The lavender, the calm I fought hard to find. The rosemary, the memory of my grandmother who once told me, let them talk. You keep building. And the marigolds? They were for my past. Bold, fiery, and unignorable. Every morning, I tend to it with care, and every evening, I sit out there with tea and remember who I used to be, and how far I've come. A few months after that quiet phone call from Nathan, I received an email that made me stare at my screen for a full minute. Subject line, feature request, Forbes women, they wanted to do a profile on me. First, I almost said no. It felt strange, exposing my journey, letting strangers into the most private corners of my life. But then I thought of Ava. Of every young girl who had emailed me, thanking me for sharing even fragments of my truth. So I said yes. On the day of the shoot, I wore a navy blue blazer and no jewelry, just a pair of simple pearl earrings my grandmother once gave me. I stood in front of the lens, chin high, heart steady. When the article came out, the headline read, "The woman who funded everyone but herself, until she stopped." And beneath it, a quote, "They called her a waste. She became a wellspring." It came unexpectedly. A Google alert. One of those grim notices no one ever prepares for. I sat in my office, blinds half closed against the afternoon sun, and read it twice over. My father had passed in his sleep after a short illness. There was no mention of me in the obituary, not as a daughter, not as anything. He'd erased me even in death, but strangely, I didn't feel hurt, just a quiet finality. I closed the tab. I didn't go to the funeral. I didn't send flowers. Instead, I donated to a local coding camp for underprivileged girls in his name. I told no one, not even the organization. That was the goodbye I chose. Not in anger, not in pain, just in peace. I eventually built a retreat space in the mountains. Not for luxury, but for solitude, for healing. A place where I could breathe away from the noise, the expectations, the ghosts of who I used to be. I named it Haven. It had floor-to-ceiling windows that caught the morning light just right, a single writing desk, a wall of books, and a bench that overlooked a quiet lake. Sometimes I brought friends. Sometimes I went alone, but every time I returned, I brought back a little more of myself. Years after I'd cut them off, I logged back into the private family trust portal. The one I hadn't touched since shutting off the funds. Everything was still there, untouched, unclaimed. I hovered over the disbursement logmy last transaction, termination of parent disbursements, effective immediately. I added a note beneath it, not for them, for me. Read, closure isn't cruel. Sometimes it's the kindest thing you can do for yourself. Then I logged out, and for the first time, it felt like the books were balanced. People love a neat narrative, a perfect rise, a hero's return, but life isn't like that. I didn't return home with banners or trophies. I didn't confront anyone at Thanksgiving. I didn't make a speech about everything they'd done wrong. I just lived. I wrote. I mentored. I built. I traveled. I laughed, and slowly, I became the kind of woman I needed when I was 16. The kind of woman who doesn't seek revenge, just resolution. The kind who doesn't need her name in a will or her picture on the mantle to know her worth. The kind who chooses herself every single time. If there's anything I've learned, it's this: you can be born into a family and still feel like a stranger. You can give everything to people who never say thank you, and yet, you can still win, because the real inheritance? It isn't money. It's not land or legacy or last names. It's the fire you carry, the strength you build when no one claps, the freedom that comes when you stop begging to be seen. They called me a waste of money, but I became something far greater. I became unbought, unbossed, and unforgettable.